Hello, I am Camil Golub, an assistant professor of philosophy at Rutgers University in Newark and a research fellow at the University of Leeds, and this is an introduction to moral subjectivism and its problems. Moral subjectivism is a fairly widespread view. I regularly teach Introduction to Ethics, and here's something that often happens in my classes. We would be talking about some difficult moral issue, like the morality of abortion, or whether we have a moral duty to donate a large part of our income to charity. And people will express some strong opinions on both sides of those issues. But almost always someone will interject and say something like, isn't morality all subjective anyway? You have your opinion and I have mine, and that's all there is to it. It's not like there are any moral facts, right? And I don't think there's anything unusual about my students. This idea that morality is subjective or a matter of opinion is quite popular, at least in Western secular societies. Well, moral subjectivism is a philosophical theory that tries to capture and justify these widespread ideas about morality. Basically, the main idea of subjectivism is that when we talk about what is morally right or wrong, we are just talking about our feelings. So, subjectivism is a view about what we mean when we make moral claims. For example, when someone says donating to charity is morally right, all she means, according to this view, is that she approves of donating to charity, or that she has some other positive feeling toward donating to charity. And the same goes for calling actions morally wrong. If I say lying is wrong, then again, according to subjectivism, all I mean is that I disapprove of lying. Here's how 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume put it. When you pronounce any action or character to be vicious, you mean nothing but that from the constitution of your nature you have a feeling or sentiment of blame from the contemplation of it. Now, think about other kinds of claims we make about the world, like the claim that there is a laptop in front of me, or that the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second. When we make these other claims, we are talking about objective facts, facts that are independent of our feelings and our beliefs. So when subjectivists say that there are no moral facts, what they mean is that there are no objective moral facts. But strictly speaking, subjectivists do believe that there are moral facts. It's just that these facts are subjective. They concern our feelings, or our attitudes more generally. It's the same kind of fact that we talk about when we say things like, I miss my friend, or I don't like cilantro. These are facts, namely facts about us and our mental states. So a subjectivist can legitimately say it is a fact that donating to charity is right, as long as they make it clear that they're talking about subjective facts. Also, these subjective moral facts will differ from person to person. For instance, if someone disapproves of abortion, then if she says abortion is wrong, she will be saying something true. But someone who does not disapprove of abortion can say abortion is not wrong, and he'll also be saying something true. Okay, so what can be said in favor of moral subjectivism? Well, one advantage that this view seems to have is precisely that it doesn't need to posit any moral facts out there in the world, waiting to be discovered. Many philosophers are skeptical about the existence of such objective moral facts, given that they're not the kind of facts that we can just observe around us, or the kind of facts that science talks about. A second related advantage for subjectivism is that it can easily explain how we gain moral knowledge. We just have to know our own feelings. Now, compare this with the view that moral facts are objective. Even if there were such objective moral facts, it's not clear how we could ever get to know them, given that, again, they don't seem to be the kind of facts that we can observe around us, or that we can discover by doing experiments. In contrast, if subjectivism is true, it's quite easy to know what the moral truths are. We just have to know what our feelings are. For example, if I know that I disapprove of kicking dogs, then, according to subjectivism, that's all it takes for me to know that kicking dogs is wrong. Subjectivism also makes good on the common sense idea that moral claims can be true or false. When I say I should help people in need, that is indeed true if I approve of helping people in need, according to subjectivism. It's just that these truths are subjective. What is true for me might not be true for you if we have conflicting feelings about moral issues. And finally, subjectivism explains a key feature of moral judgments. Generally speaking, there's a strong connection between people's moral beliefs and what they are motivated to do. For example, you would be very surprised to meet someone who claims that eating meat is wrong and yet eats burgers every week. Moral judgments seem to be practical in a fundamental sense. They're tied to our motivations and our actions. And subjectivism can account for this. If when I say eating meat is wrong, what I mean is that I disapprove of eating meat, then you can indeed expect that this attitude of disapproval will be reflected in my actions. Now let's talk about the problems that subjectivism faces. The first problem is that subjectivism seems to have some pretty counterintuitive consequences, particularly when we consider people with unusual or abhorrent feelings. Think about someone who approves of genocide. It might be hard to think of such a person, but they do exist, and they have existed in the history of humanity. Take, for instance, Genghis Khan, the medieval emperor of the Mongol Empire, whose armies massacred as many as 40 million people. Now, if this person said genocide is okay, then according to subjectivism, they would be saying something true. This sounds like a pretty bad consequence of the view. Now, this is not the last word in this discussion. Some subjectivists will respond to this problem by saying, look, it's not our actual attitudes that determine what is morally true for us, but rather the attitudes that we would have if we were better informed and more rational. For example, perhaps Genghis Khan wouldn't approve of genocide if he got to know all the facts about what genocide involves, or if he realized that this attitude was in conflict with other feelings that he had. But ultimately, this problem will still persist. It seems possible for someone to be fully informed and perfectly rational and still have abhorrent attitudes like approving of genocide, and subjectivism seems to deliver the wrong verdicts about such people. A related problem for subjectivism is the problem of error and uncertainty. On this view, our feelings dictate what is morally true. So, if we know our own feelings and have all the relevant information about the world, we can't really be wrong or uncertain about the moral truths. But this doesn't seem to match our intuitions or our experience as people who think about moral questions. Most of us do not think of ourselves as infallible about morality. We often come to think that we've been morally blind about a certain issue. For instance, over the last couple of decades, many people have changed their minds about whether people of the same sex should be allowed to get married. And if you ask someone about this change of mind, they'll probably tell you that they used to have the wrong view on this issue and now they have arrived at the correct view. But subjectivism seems unable to make sense of such claims. For a subjectivist, if someone used to disapprove of same-sex marriage, then it was true for them at the time that same-sex marriage was wrong. They weren't making any mistake in believing this. So subjectivism has a problem here. In other cases, we are uncertain about what the moral truth is. For instance, many people find the question of whether abortion is permissible to be a very difficult moral issue. Moreover, when engaging with such hard questions, most people aren't just trying to figure out how they feel about those issues. They're trying to discover what the right answer is. For instance, whether abortion is in fact morally permissible. So again, subjectivism seems unable to account for this kind of moral uncertainty. Finally, subjectivism runs into a big problem when it comes to moral disagreement. Intuitively, people can disagree on moral issues. But it is hard to see how subjectivism can make sense of this. Take, for instance, two people who disagree about the morality of eating meat. David says, eating meat is wrong, and Elena replies, no, eating meat is not wrong. Now, if subjectivism is true, then what David is saying is, I disapprove of eating meat, while Elena is saying, I do not disapprove of eating meat. But these claims are compatible. It can be true at the same time that David disapproves of eating meat and that Elena does not disapprove of eating meat. It's just as if David said, I'm in New York right now, and Elena replied, I'm not in New York right now. These claims are clearly compatible. There's no disagreement here. For the same reason, it's hard to see how subjectivism can account for the moral disagreement between David and Elena, or more generally for any kind of moral disagreement between people. Now, subjectivists might offer various responses to this problem, which I can't really get into in this short video. But I think it's fair to say that the problem of disagreement is the most important problem faced by moral subjectivism. and perhaps the main reason why subjectivism is not a popular view among philosophers who work on the nature of morality these days. This has been my introduction to moral subjectivism and its problems. Thanks for watching.